Let's talk about archbishops. This time it's the Archbishop of York. Archbishop of Canterbury, of course, sort of like, kind of out of a job at the moment. But Stephen Cottrell is the Archbishop of York. And as a result of that title, he is the acting head of the Church of England. An interview on Sky News yesterday, he decided, along with pretty much everyone who's ever held any of these roles, to have a go at anyone on the right of British politics. Plus ça change, I think we can safely say. But he echoed the sort of criticism we've heard from all of his predecessors, basically criticising what he called knee-jerk short-term policies from reform when it came to migrant deportation, saying the plan won't solve the problem long-term. Not quite sure why he thinks anyone else's policies will. But he also was very critical of the two-child benefit cap, which the government, we're told, is looking to lift, but will cost a couple of billion quid of your or my money, to give more money to families who have a load of kids and for some reason choose not to work to support them themselves. But should politicians have to take criticism from archbishops, or should archbishops spend their time talking to their congregations rather than to Sky News readers? Well, let's talk to Gavin Ashenden. He's a former Anglican bishop, former Church of England priest and a former chaplain to the Queen. A very good morning to you, Gavin.
Hello, Julia. Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Should religious leaders be given their tuppence worth on political issues, particularly very controversial, political issues that are very, well, really do divide the nation?
So, Julia, this is a conversation, I think, in two parts. The first part is easy because the answer is going to be no, and I'll try and explain why as succinctly as possible. But there's another part which is much more difficult, I think, that I hope can get flagged up, which is what the role of the church is when your society turns increasingly totalitarian, because that's what's happening. So if we look at the first question, it's always very easy to exercise political commentary rather than spiritual judgment, because it's just, the levers. It's easier to pontificate politically than it is to say your prayers and to try and change people's lives internally. So, I mean, first of all, the Church of England is a dysfunctional organisation. It can't choose its own CEO, and we're fed up, of course, with the fact that the bishops and the clergy are all paid up. Well, perhaps not paid up, but they all express themselves as socialists, whereas the people in the pews, on their whole, somewhere near the centre.
But whenever
right.
there is any interjection into British politics, it's always entirely predictable what side they're going to take.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And so this is really silly of them, because what they're doing is they're disenfranchising their own flock. Their job is to look after a mixed political community, some on the left, some in the middle, some on the right, some no politics at all. So it's really silly in that situation to come out with some very strong politics from a fairly extreme part of the spectrum. It's just irresponsible if you're running an organisation which is multi-political because it's got a different agenda. So that's silly. Then, of course, there's a whole business of what do they know? And the answer is they don't know very much.
Well, he's got a media studies degree from a former police, so I'm sure he knows everything about both topips. And I'm being facetious, but
Yeah, and of course, I'm trying not to be, I'm trying not to be rude and ad hominem. But the fact is, they sound like third-rate council politicians, and it's not a good look. It's not very competent. They're not very good at they're not good at their day job, let alone good at their hobby.
Well, remember we had, I've lost track of which useless archbishop it was, but was criticising payday lenders and saying how outrageous these payday lenders were.
Yes, that was Welby.
Yeah, and then we found out that the church was invested in a payday lending company.
Yes, of course. The real job of the church is to transform human nature. This is a very big task. It's immensely important, and our whole civilization depends on the church doing it well. Western civilization has grown out of Christendom, and it's done some very beautiful things, including, and this is the most important thing, I think, the sanctity of the individual. You basically don't get to kill people or imprison them because they are made in the image of God. Now, you don't have to believe in God, but it's a very good protection for the safety of people in any circumstances.
The key, and this is very different from a lot of other religions. The key role of your status as an individual with having value in itself. I'm a fundamentalist atheist, but even I completely recognise, again, our entire way of life is built on that, Judeo-Christian culture. Here's the thing, though. If you're an archbishop, you're there to sort of, to preach on behalf of, the poor huddled masses. You have to worry about the rich people. They're doing okay. But, this is what Jesus Christ is all about, the poor people. If you think these people are desperate migrants, they've got nothing, we should be welcoming them in from the rest of the world. If you're worried about, say, the poorest families, and often they are families often of immigrant heritage, statistically that is the case, and they've got 3 or 4 or 5 kids, and they're not getting any extra benefits as a result of those extra children after 2, the 2-child benefit cap, you're concerned about them and you're worried about them living in poverty. Don't you have a duty to speak out?
Well, I'd like... Can I move the conversation on slightly? Because so if I say to you as an atheist, look, the thing that you and I are absolutely convinced about is the integrity of human beings and their basic freedoms. Christianity does that. But there are other systems that competing for our allegiance politically that don't do that. And we're facing 2 of them at the moment. And one is from the left. So totalitarian Marxist states don't do it. And the other is from what I'll call the far right, which in this case is Islam. Under Sharia law, you don't get those things either. Effectively, whether you're a Christian or just a Democrat, only Christianity as an ideology provides this. So basically, Democrats and Christians ought to make an allegiance if either the left or the right are going to take away our freedoms. Now, you've just had a very moving story about the growth of the state here taking away our freedoms. So what should the church be doing in this case? It doesn't have a right to talk about immigration policy or benefits, but what it does have a right to do is to talk about the overreach of the state, compelling citizens who ought to have certain freedoms. That's what we should be hearing from our archbishops. Now, the other problem is that the people who are coming in are Muslims, and there's a perfectly pleasant conversation to be had about the
time is against us. I've got to warn you, I've got about 10 more seconds. Sorry, Gavin.
43% of the Islamic community in this country wants Sharia law. Sharia law is not democratic, it's not people friendly, and that's what's coming.
And it's certainly not British culture. And we need to talk about this stuff openly and not just shout big at anyone who raises these issues. Gavin Ashenden, really interesting. Must come on again soon, talk at greater length. Lots of really interesting points there.